Welcome filmmakers and adventure seekers to the most exhilarating reality competition of the year.
Oh, I love that.
That's so cool.
Our contestants will face off in a series of nail-biting challenges that will push their creativity,
It's getting so dark.
ingenuity,
I gotta make it work.
and storytelling skills to their absolute limits. All while navigating through treacherous mountain terrain and unknown wilderness.
Whoa.
I'll see you at the end.
So join us on this epic adventure where the magic of filmmaking meets the grandeur of nature. LUMIX presents Shutter Showdown. Get ready for the ultimate filmmaking battle.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't really know what's in store or what we're going to be doing, but I think it'll be pretty fun.
You've got a very pretty dog. Do you want videos of it? I do not have nearly enough footage. Yesterday, I had so much footage.
Tomorrow is the true filmmaking challenge, and let's see how this young kid can perform.
Should've got that 14 mil.
I just was trying to run to make time.
Oh, I'm so sorry to the sound guy.
This is like way insane.
It's a lot less humid than I thought.
Where do we go? I just wish we had more time.
Man, I'm loving this spot. Where's the tripod?
I do not have nearly enough footage.
I feel like you're getting all the cool shots.
Try to film as much as I can so I don't have nothing.
Pull!
Trees, the mountains, everything about this place is just gorgeous.
We definitely got the best challenge. I've got a great camera. I've got a great set of lenses. I have a lot of questions, so I'm excited to see what we get into.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's LUMIX Live. This is going to be a bit of a, what I would say is probably a little bit of a slower episode. As we just showed during the opening, I wanted to provide a little bit of a teaser to everybody for a really cool project that I've been working on with our teams for a couple of weeks, or actually a couple of months, for a little while now. Called LUMIX Presents Shutter Showdown, which is a project that actually I just got back from some stuff up in New York with it. So I encourage you to take a look at it. We've got a couple of the actual videos up on the on our YouTube channel for you to take a look at, comment, see if you want to get part of it. We should be actually starting that to be broadcasted in November. So super excited about it. I encourage you all to take a look at it. It was a lot of fun, and I think you guys are going to have a pretty cool time, I think, watching and commenting and seeing how the whole kind of thing works out in the end. So yeah, but as I said, this is going to be a bit of a slower episode than we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. I am a bit tired from travel for the last as of last night into this morning, so figured today would be a good opportunity to just kind of take it down a notch, do a general AMA session, talk about some of the cool stuff that we've announced over the last couple of weeks, answer some questions that y'all might have about the cameras that maybe we haven't been able to get to over the last couple of sessions that we've had, And yeah, just kind of go from there and just kind of hang out with everybody. So if you are new to Lumix Live, these are weekly broadcasts that we do here on YouTube every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. For the most part, every once in a while I gotta miss one, but they're all designed for you, users of the brand, people that are looking to get into our cameras, and you want to learn some things about either new cameras or existing cameras that we have out available already. So if you have questions for today's stream, tag at Lumix USA like others are doing in the chat. This way I can just see them on my side and we can try to get to as many of the new questions as we possibly can. I do have my G9 Mark II hooked up because I do want to talk about a couple things that we've gotten questions about and give you a little preview of some of the cool stuff that we made an announcement for in the S5 Mark II and the Mark II X. Some of these things are already existing in other cameras, so it's easy for me to show you how they're going to be implemented by using a camera that it's already implemented in. But yeah, before we jump into that, I want to remind everybody about Lumix Pro Services. We have Lumix Pro Services Red and Platinum here in the United States. Lumix Pro Services Red is our free program that once you purchase a camera, get yourself registered on this program. It is free. Follow the QR code on the screen or a link down in the description. This gets you your 3-year extended manufacturer warranty on any products that you purchase that are within the qualified list, which in the United States is the Micro Four Thirds and the full frame L-mount series of cameras and lenses. If you're someone who likes to have a slightly higher level of service and support program backing your equipment, you can always take a look at the Platinum tier. Platinum tier is a paid level service that's going to get you the same 3-year extended manufacturer warranty on top of the 1 year that comes in the camera. But you're also going to get some added perks. So you'll get 2-day repairs with free next day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs. So if you drop or break a lens or a camera or something like that that wouldn't be covered under warranty, you get a discount on those repairs. You also get annual sensor and EVF cleanings, lens calibrations, and firmware updates if there's something that you would prefer us to handle instead of trying yourself. And then you also get access to our exclusive hotline. So if you are someone who prefers to speak to a person, to troubleshoot an issue, to kind of walk through maybe a problem that you might be having, you get access to that. Now that phone line is open from 9 to 5 weekdays East Coast time, so during the week you would be able to have access to that, and that is a perk in the Platinum tier program. So if you've picked up a Lumix camera, I encourage you to get yourself at least registered on the Red tier. As I said, it's free. We got the links down in the description, and it's a pretty cool program to work with. So with that, let's kind of go through some of the questions and yeah, let's just kick this thing off. We'll probably run this stream for about an hour like we've normally done. If I get through as many of the questions as I want to, we should be at about an hour. So let's see here. Building says, has the TC 1.4, which is the 1.4 teleconverter in Micro Four Thirds, been discontinued? I've had a problem finding them, and when I ask the chat service on Panasonic's USA website, they stated it's no longer in production. That is incorrect. I think there was a little bit of confusion when we made an announcement for the new 100 to 400, which is teleconverter compatible. The 1.4 and the 2X converter are not discontinued. They have traditionally been a little bit harder to source. Primarily down because of the fact that there were only, at the time, there were only 2 lenses that were compatible with them, so they were just a little bit harder to come by. That should be changing now that we have the 100 to 400, that is the new lens. The teleconverters that are currently available, so the DMW TC14 and the TC20, that we've been selling for a while, those are the same teleconverters. In some regions, you may see a new letter at the end of the teleconverter. In some cases, that could be just because of a like a reintroduction, because maybe something changed in the manual that was included in the box, or something in the boxing has changed a little bit. So there isn't like a new teleconverter for it. The ones that already exist are the ones for the new lenses, and they're still compatible with the 200 millimeter, the 50 to 200, But yeah, hopefully the inventory situation on those should get a little bit better. As I said, now that we have another lens that supports it, there's an increased reason for dealers and stuff to actually have them in stock versus having something as like a special order where they may not want to hold inventory too long of something like that. But yeah, they're not discontinued. Let's see here. I put a 12-100 Olympus lens on the G9 Mark II, and IS settings were grayed out in the menu. Lens switch was only turning on and off lens IS. Will I be able to use in-body IS with only IS lenses with final firmware? So this is a really good question. I think we do get this a lot, and I have maybe a little bit more information about this than I've had in the past. So because of the way our image stabilization system has fundamentally worked for a very long time, we do prioritize the in-body stabilization in the way our system works, because the vast majority of lenses that are not going to be from LUMIX are non-optic stabilized. When you do put a lens like a 12-100 or another optically stabilized lens that is not from LUMIX, it is going to prioritize the optic stabilization. That is kind of just how it works at this point. There is no cross-brand compatibility for what we call dual IS2. That would require Olympus to divulge information to us on how their stabilization system works, and that typically won't happen. So at that point, if you're using something like 12-100 or any of the other lenses from them that have optic stabilization, that will prioritize their optic stabilization, because that is the system that lens is reporting back to our camera. If something were to change, from what I understand, it would have to change on their side, not ours, for the OM lenses, to basically enable some sort of compatibility towards our in-body image stabilization system. So at the moment, that is how it works, unless something changes from outside factors. Let's see here. Will you include a small battery charger in the G9 Mark II box? I did not buy the OM Systems 01 because of the lack of portable charger. I want to charge batteries in the hotel when shooting outside. It has become a relatively commonplace phenomenon in the industry now that newer cameras typically are not coming with the separate battery chargers or the sled or docking piece. That is primarily because these cameras charge over USB now, and the external charging block is considered an accessory. So unfortunately, I believe that is just a state of where kind of things are, unless you go up into very higher end cameras where they may use a slightly different battery than some others. The fact that we use the BLK22 battery and the charger that we've sold with the original S5, the S5 Mark II, the Mark II-X, the GH5 Mark II, the GH6, they all use the same battery, so the chargers are fairly abundant out in the market. That's partially kind of the decision there. So yeah, the G9 Mark II will not come with an external docking style battery charger like the vast majority of the cameras in this category. Yeah, there are options out there, but from our side, I can only recommend the LUMIX option. If you decide to go to some other third-party option for charging sleds, it's completely on your own side, and if it damages the battery, that's not something that we cover. Let's see here. Many photography programs, including Lightroom and Affinity Photo, can't open S5 Mark II RAW files. What's the issue? The original S5 worked fine, and why don't you help them with support? Well, this is actually a misconception. We do actually support companies for RAW support. In many cases, programs like Affinity Photo are using open source RAW decoding. I think it's called LibRAW. That is something that is a totally open source platform. That's not something that we are involved with, to my knowledge. So As far as Affinity Photo goes, it's because of the decoding software or the decoding code that they are using for raw file processing. On the flip side of that, Lightroom 100%. The Adobe Suite 100% does support the S5 Mark II RAW files, supports the GH6, and also, actually, as of last week, it already supports the G9 Mark II RAW files. If you are using a standalone version of Lightroom, which is the older version, so not Lightroom Classic, that is an Adobe decision to not continue to update the RAW software or the RAW compatibility within the standalone version. What I would recommend for you, if you are locked in on wanting to continue to use the existing version of Lightroom that you have that is not part of Creative Cloud, Adobe does offer the DNG converter, so digital negative converter. That, as long as you download the most recent and up-to-date version, will be able to convert your RW2 files from an S5 Mark II or a Mark IIX or pretty much any camera, because that will continue to get updates, into the more generic DNG file, which programs like the standalone versions of Lightroom and even Affinity Photo should be able to have no problem working with. So that can be a workaround if you don't want to go into the Creative Cloud side of Adobe. On the flip side, this is one of the reasons why companies have moved to some subscription models for software. They can continue to add and develop based on a version instead of doing single standalone, where then, you know, if you want the newest feature, like everything that Adobe did with AI noise reduction and stuff like that, it's a bit of a give and take for some of that stuff. The Adobe's Lightroom Classic and now Lightroom, the mobile kind of desktop-ish hybrid version, they are very powerful programs now. I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for people who don't like subscription services, but there are definitely benefits to having continuous support like that versus standalone. But if you are only on a standalone kind of concept, that's what you prefer, nothing against it. But it means that you will have to have an extra step in your raw editing process, and that's not going to just be from us. That's going to be from pretty much anybody. But that's why Adobe keeps the Adobe DNG converter active and updated with the RAW file compatibility, so you can still use those old programs. Let's see here. Will the S5 Mark II and Mark IIX get the AF features that the G9 Mark II has? This has been asked a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. I can't confirm or deny what updates may or may not be coming to S5 Mark II and Mark IIX, other than the update that we announced last week, which is that the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark IIX on the 24th of October, so the 23rd late at night in the US time, will be getting handheld high-resolution shot mode. So as far as I know, that will be the first full-frame camera in the industry to support a handheld high-resolution shot, which is our mode that, compiles in camera and gives you the RAW file. It will also be getting the ability to do up to a 20 times magnification punch-in for manual focus assist, utilizing the full frame area. And then it is also getting the AF point scope functionality, which basically, if you've ever used pinpoint autofocus on the Lumix cameras, which is where it takes the point, gives you a magnification while it's focusing, so you get a better idea of where the focus point actually is, which is a great thing for like macro work or really tight situations where even the smallest one area box kind of covers areas you may not want it to be focusing in. The AF point scope allows you to use that in any of the focus modes and just have that assisted punch in to kind of just really make sure that you get it while you're using the autofocus. So those three things are coming on the 24th. October 24th, I think it's 1 o'clock UTC, so it'll be in the evening on the 23rd. Get subscribed to this channel if you're not already. Follow us over on Instagram, all the different platforms, because once it's available, you'll see the announcements there, that you'll be able to go to the links and download. So, let's see here. The other question, is there an option in the G9 Mark II to transfer files recorded on SD cards to the SSD to make backups when on the road? Can I star photos in camera, and will Adobe see these ratings later? So first part of your question, SD card to SSD transfer. Unfortunately, that is not something that can be done, because the camera has to change the actual file writing pipeline to go from SD card to SSD. They don't run simultaneously, so that unfortunately means that you can't do SD card transfer to SSD. If you were in a camera like the GH6, which does CF Express and SD cards, you can do it there from SD to CF Express or CF Express to SD card. But even in that camera, you can't go from the internal media storage or the onboard media storage to an external SSD, just because the system has to physically change the pipeline that it's working on for storage and reading media. So you don't, unfortunately, have a crossover to be able to change where your storage devices are. I know it's not the greatest. I would love to see it, but my understanding is that it's not currently possible. Any word on frame rate for DR boost in stills mode? Thanks. Yeah, so all the documentation I have just states that it's up to 60 frames per second as far as the DR boost functionality. There is one note that I am still waiting to get some clarity on, which says that SH options may not support the DR boost functionality. I am doing some more tests in my own shooting scenario. However, when I do take raw files from the GH6 that are in electronic shutter mode and open them up in Adobe Bridge, they are reporting back as 16-bit. So my understanding is that that would mean that they are taking advantage of DR boost. But I do have to get a little bit more confirmation. I know it's been a long time that you've been asking that. I wish I had a better answer for you right now. But I will keep pushing to get you a clear answer there. Ulrich, how's it going? Says, do you do the motorcycle pictures on Lime Creek Road? When I used to go there with my bicycle 20 years ago, it had a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Kind of a bummer for the motorized... I think it's supposed to be faction. Yes, actually, that is where I do spend a lot of my time. So if you ever happen to be in Austin and you are a photographer, on weekends, you can typically find me up on Lime Creek Road photographing motorcycles and classic cars and all that stuff that like to run through that street there. It's a beautiful stretch of road. Let's see here. Will there be an updated camera for popular compact ZS200? Unfortunately, I can't comment on future product development or plans. I wish I could, but I like being employed. Tobias, as much as I love the About 8-stop IBIS, it is frustrating experience to do handheld pans in video as IBIS keeps fighting the movement. Any way to address that? Turn off horizontal stabilization. Tobias, so one of the first things I would actually recommend you take a look at is, and I'm going to my G9 Mark II here. In the filmmaking part of the menu here, make sure I still have my audio is good. In the filmmaking or the camera portion here, so the video menu option, as you go through, you'll have the option to select image stabilization. Depending on the lens that you're working with, like right now I have the 12mm Summilux attached to the camera. You may have options here for normal panning optimized stabilization or panning up and down optimized stabilization or totally off. Not all of the lenses have this. If the lens has built-in image stabilization, this just shows auto. But this can help in a scenario like that, depending on the lens you're working with. And depending on if the lens enables this function. The other thing, which is very common that I'm seeing online with people that are doing panning work with our image stabilization, do not have Boost IS turned on. And electronic stabilization on cameras outside of the G9 Mark II, I would also recommend having turned off. Boost IS, which is the most common thing that causes people that kind of jumpiness in a panning shot. Boost IS is usually the culprit for many. Boost IS is designed so that it is functioning closer to a photographic style of stabilization, which means it's going to try to lock that sensor down as best it can. Your active movement of it is actively trying to fight that. So if you turn that off, that 99% of the time that solves the person's problem. The other potential is if you are using any of the electronic stabilization in a camera. Electronic stabilization works on a couple of different principles. It kind of depends on the camera that you're working with, like what generation of the system it is. Vast majority of electronic stabilization systems are analyzing the video feed that it's actually trying to stabilize. This is why some cameras, if you watch their electronic stabilization and you have the camera set on a tripod, if a leaf is moving, you'll actually see the frame move as the leaf moves. Ours doesn't do that, especially in all the newer versions of it. But that can also potentially cause some challenges with, like when you're deliberately panning, trying to do smooth, active movements. So those are probably three things that I would recommend. You know, you kind of try, see if that helps your situation. Worst case, like if you're trying to do pans, I mean, you call out here, Tobias, that you're doing handheld, which defeats what I was going to say. But if you're not doing handheld and you want to do tripod pans, you probably, best case, just turn all stabilization off at that point. Let's see here. Shutter Showdown is looking great. Happy you made it for the live stream this week. I'm happy I made it too. We have the Formula One race is coming into Austin this weekend. So when I got on my plane in New York at like 6 a.m. this morning, our pilot was yeah, we might be getting delayed. There's a lot of traffic down here, so I was like so happy that I was able to get home. I hate missing these streams, and I didn't have time to do a pre-recorded one for everybody. So Doctor says, do you personally use the DMW XLR1? If so, what shotgun lavs do you enjoy using with it? That's actually a very good question. So when I do use the XLR1 audio adapter, I am using the Sennheiser AVX system. So their XLR receiver and then their AVX transmitters. Typically, I'm using lavaliers at that point. More recently, I'm actually not using the XLR1 audio adapter with my S5 Mark II, Mark IIX, and then now the G9 Mark II. Because I am typically using the Rode Wireless Go 2s, just plugging them direct into camera. And little tip actually for many, most of the time I'm not actually using the onboard recorded audio, even if I have the mics plugged into the camera. Most of the time with those Go Wireless 2s, I am using the stored audio that the transmitters record directly. So I'll do a sync just to make sure and do backup. I let the cameras just record internally for scratch in case I screw up on the lavalier recording. And then when I go in, since Premiere is my kind of software of choice for editing, I just go in and just have it auto sync. At that point, I may only have to like bump by one frame one direction or another, but it gets me right there, and it's just kind of been flawless. I like being able to do the 32-bit float, and I purposely am doing that in quotes. I know you all know with what they're doing, so it just makes things a little bit easier. I've had situations where I end up just screwing something up, and having the ability to have that much more headroom in the audio with 32-bit float definitely has saved my butt a number of times in a recording, because I really don't want to have to go record things again just because I screwed up audio. Where were we? Overseas clients can register. I think that was for LUMIX Pro Services. You can take a look down in the description. I have a link for the global portal. If your region is there, you would be able to register if it's available in your region. Are there remote wireless shutter triggers available? I know Lumix Android photo app available for wireless shutter trigger, but I want something small and quick to use. Yeah, there are. There are third-party wireless triggers out there, FC. You just want to make sure that the wireless trigger, like I think Hanel makes some. It's one of those things that there are so many companies that make them. The biggest thing that you just have to make sure is that in the kit that you go with, because at that point they're typically going to be a transmitter or a receiver that has to wire into the remote port on the camera. Those, you just have to make sure that the cable that they are providing with the transmitter is designed for Panasonic stills. The generic ones, it's weird. Half of them will only trigger video, the other half will trigger stills. So you have to be a little cognizant about how those work. How are the low light capabilities in the G9 Mark II compared to an older camera like the G80? That's from Daniel. It is a night and day difference, truthfully. The processing engine that we use, the L-squared derived engine on the G9 Mark II, the new 25 megapixel sensor, the DR boost functionality, all culminate to a substantial, I feel, improvement over cameras from the G85, G80 era of image processing. Yes, you are going from 16 to 25 megapixel in that case. And the traditional thinking would be that, oh, you know, higher pixel density would mean worse image quality because it's smaller pixels. But that's only the case if the same technology is used within the sensors with the same resolution. A lot has changed in sensor design since the G85, G80 era 16 megapixel sensors. And yeah, the G9 Mark II definitely outperforms it in low light and in regular broad daylight with the DR boost function now working all the way down to 100 ISO. So it's a real solid improvement. I encourage you, if you're able to get out there and get hands-on, to do some test shots yourself. You'll definitely get a really kind of good feel for how it works. This is also one of those areas where I highly encourage people, if you are looking to see what image quality you can actually get out of new sensors. This isn't just us. This is any new camera, new sensor. A lot of places go on and on when they review cameras about test charts. And test charts can tell you certain things, but they can't actually tell you how the camera's going to work in the real world. It's the same logic that I talked about last week with how far or how much can you pull out of the shadows of a RAW file. While a test chart gives you one piece of information, when you're actually out in the field, you're going to have way more variables that are really unique to your situation when you're shooting. So if you're ever able to get a chance to get your hands on these cameras, or any of the cameras that you're ever interested in, go to your local store, get your hands on it, see if you can put a card in there, take a couple shots with it, and then work with your software to edit it and the way you shoot. It'll be a night and day change from staring at test charts. Let's see here. Any news on Superzooms? Sorry, Cliff. Even if I did know, I wouldn't be able to tell you. For those who don't know, if you go to the LUMIX Global portal, we do have a couple of lenses that are on that list for future release. We haven't listed what the focal ranges are for them. There will be a macro, a kind of super zoom style lens, and I think there was a wider aperture or a wider angle lens also added there. But if you go up onto the global site, you can see set of information. Yeah. So here, love these streams. Question, my S5 Mark II does not like my 1/8 Pro Mist filter. The autofocus doesn't function well with it. Any tips? Many thanks. Love, love, love my S5 Mark II. So the Pro Mist filter question is actually something that when I saw Caleb Hoover's video demonstrating and explaining what his experiences have been, that is something that has been passed over to our engineering team to kind of evaluate and see what's going on. Pro Mist filters or any kind of filtration that is altering the light path can cause some weird oddities with focusing, especially in lower light. So it's something that is being checked in on. I typically don't use filtration like that as far as like softening the image goes. My theory and logic is I want to capture it as crisp and as sharp as possible in the camera, and then go into software and use like I believe Tiffin makes their digital versions of their filtration, because I'd rather have the clean original file that can be manipulated. But that's also because I come at a lot of this stuff more as a photographer than a cinematographer. So I completely understand why you want to use filtration like that. What I can promise you is that our team is looking in evaluating. There are a ton of variations of those kinds of filters out there. There are a bunch of different brands. There are a bunch of different strength levels. So certain stuff like that may not be the fastest to see anything come out of a point of me saying, hey, I've let them know to take a look at this and see if there's like what they can find. Like, what are these filters doing that potentially is causing something to change? Yeah, so. Is it possible to do high-speed sync with the LUMIX S5 Mark II? Yes, it is. You can 100% do high-speed flash sync with the S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark IIX, the G9 Mark II, actually pretty much all of our cameras. On that actual kind of point, so if you use, like I have my Godox V860 version 2 here, there is the option on this flash. Let's see if I can get it to pull up here. There's an option on this flash right here to click sync. Now this puts the flash into high-speed sync mode. Well, I probably just broke my flash, but oh well. It puts that flash into the high-speed sync option. When that is enabled and you put it onto your camera and say you're in, manual control for it, you'll be able to actually go through and go above the 250th of a second. If you are looking at the camera, this is where, with the flash attached, you'll see the options in here for things like, we used to call it wireless FP. Those options are designed for when you're using our flashes. So if you're using our FL, like 580L or the 360L, I believe, these are controllable options for when you're using our system. When you're using something like the Godox flashes that are designed for Olympus and Panasonic, you just have to tell the flash itself to go into HS mode, and then when it's attached, you'll be able to go past the 250th of a second. Obviously, remember that when you are doing things like high-speed flash sync, there is no guarantee that every single power level, every single shutter speed actuation is going to be not having any kind of shading on the top or bottom. Because at that point, it's dependent on what the flash's kind of consistency and power level is as it's doing high-speed sync. But yeah, it 100% works. I use it all the time when I am doing any kind of environmental portraiture and I just want to add a little bit extra level of light to it. So, how do I get my S5 Mark II to sync at 1/250th? It seems to only have a max of sync of 1/200th with Godox. That's going to be the setting it up, answering from Jacob's question, Mark. You can set it into high-speed sync, and you can get it up to 250th. What is the native ISO on the GH6 with and without dynamic range boost? I want to ensure I'm getting the cleanest images on lowest ISOs for photo and video. Good question. So, I will actually go to my GH6 here. So, and well, question is, it'd help if I put a battery in it, wouldn't it? Battery, pretty sure I have a charged battery here. Let us take a look. So if you are using dynamic range boost on the GH6, your native ISO or your base ISO for the point where you're going to get the most dynamic range and the best image quality and the lowest noise is 2000 ISO for DR boost. If you are using this camera and you do not want dynamic range boost on for any number of those reasons, like if you're going to be shooting up at, you know, over 60 frames per second, this is where the base ISO, so let me make sure that that's off. Let me change this to Vlog. Your base ISO in that case without DR boost is 250 ISO. So non-DR boost, 250 ISO on the GH6, DR boost on 2000 ISO, up to 60 frames per second. Those are going to give you best balance of noise, dynamic range, and just general performance for image. Hello, after I press red button in video mode, I have some latency around 1 to 2 seconds and action go. Any help to fix this? Thanks for the support in live. Yeah, so the most common reason why when you press the record button on the camera that you get a lag between when the input is said record to when the card starts writing and you get the notice that it's writing is the memory card. Either the memory card is not reporting back to the camera properly what its read and write speeds are, what its kind of DRAM storage allocation is, so it has to wait for the callback from the card. That is like 99% of the time the problem that you run into with that. It is part of the reason why we have recommended SD cards and CF Express and SSDs on our tested lists online for compatibility. That really kind of makes up most of the reasons for that. The only other reason I can think of is even if you've got a rated card, you know, a card that we have validated, if that card is old, if that card has been formatted in a different camera, if that card is near capacity, those are all situations that with media can also slow down that card's performance, which can cause camera hangups, which can cause a potential lag in the starting to film a clip or ending to film a clip. Another potential there could also be making sure that you're using genuine batteries with the camera. If a third-party battery is not applying the right voltage, or if it is spiking voltage, or if it's undervolting the camera, cameras can act funny that way. That's going to be the same thing for no matter what camera you use. I don't care if it's ours or anybody else's. There are reasons why genuine batteries are the recommended and preferred, aside from what people tend to think, you know, hey, it's, you know, we just want the money for the battery. No, a lot of times it's really just because third-party batteries are cheap for a reason. The safety measures put into those batteries to keep them from swelling when you charge, the voltage regulation, the temperature protections, all that kind of stuff. Many third-party batteries don't include those things, and that can cause havoc to your camera if you're trying to, you know, pinpoint where the problem is. If you're ever running through and you have an issue with a camera, trace back step by step, remove all third-party components from this, go to first-party options, and look at documentation that's available. So like I said, with cards, because we actually rate cards for these cameras now and we have validated approved lists, these are the cards that are designed to perform properly. If at that point you still have a problem and it's a new card, that's when I would recommend that you reach out to the card manufacturer, say, hey, this card's acting funny, it's been validated, and it's a brand new card. It's also why I encourage you to always buy from a reputable dealer that you can be able to actually get a problem sorted with. And don't cheap out on memory if you can avoid it. So, let's see here. Where did we go? For non-Panasonic lenses with OIS, would it be possible to do dual IS light, where the OIS would be primarily but sensor shift for rotational movement? So again, Sean, for that, I addressed the question a little bit earlier. A dual IS system that we implement requires the lens manufacturer to communicate to our camera and to communicate to our engineers how that system works so they can program in the interaction between the sensor stabilization and the optic stabilization. It is possible. If you look at the L-mount system, so S5 Mark II, S5, S5 Mark IIX, and something like the Sigma 60 to 600, like I have back on my shelf there, the Sigma telephoto OS lenses do have dual IS compatibility. You have varying different controls on that. Olympus, or not Olympus. Sigma, when you actually look at the user manual for something like the 60 to 600, it actually does tell you when you should be setting the lens to use, mode 1, mode 2, when you want it off, when you want it, what you're trying to shoot with it. And our camera has an option in the menus also to tell you how it's going to work. When you're using a lens like, from Sigma in the L-mount that has OIS and it's on our camera body, the camera body is handling rotational movement and the lens is handling vertical and horizontal. So you're not getting the full-blown stabilization. You are getting basically the maximum you can get out of what the lens's optic stabilization block is designed to do, and then where our system can supplement it and have everything actually work well in a good handshake. Micro Four Thirds, at that point, it's up to the other companies to want to support what our system's doing. I don't know if they can, and I don't think that they would. So, let's see here. Does H.264, H.265 codecs support metadata? It would be nice to have some information for post. Currently, no. H.264 and H.265 video codecs in the cameras do not have kind of the full suite of metadata information. There's some very basic information in there, obviously like color profile and the encoding used. Is it Rec 2020? Is it HLG? Is it Rec 709? Vlog, vgamut, so on and so forth. When you shoot ProRes, if you're on G9 Mark II, GH6, S5 Mark IIX, if you are shooting ProRes on those cameras, that does have metadata sent over. That will tell you your ISO, that will tell you your white balance selected at the start of the clip. It'll tell you what aperture you were at if it's communicating that information at the start of the clip. If you change any of the settings while you're recording or while you're rolling, those changes are not recorded because metadata is captured at the beginning of the clip. But yeah, so there is metadata, but you got to shoot ProRes for it. Any chance we can get new LUMIX S series? Whoa. New LUMIX S series 16 to 35 or 24 to 120 lenses in a year or two for both the great cameras S5 Mark II, Mark IIX, not the Sigma, but native LUMIX S series lenses. So future lens development is something I can't comment on other than we do have the future roadmap published there that has, I think it's 3 or 4 lenses shown. An ultra telephoto, an ultra zoom, a macro, and then a wide angle are coming. But I can't share any details of when that stuff's coming out. Even if I did know, I've said it before and I kind of joke about it. I like being employed, and I'm sure y'all like me being employed to be able to talk to you about some stuff. But yeah. Do you suppose you could explain how the new rolling shutter works? How does it know that's skewed and what isn't? And what about the new corner warping correction in active E-stabilization? It's a good question there. So, yeah, so we've had the ability in basically from, I believe it was the S1 and forward, we've had the ability to do skew correction for stills capture. Typically on the earlier iterations of this was done through manual choice. So if you were in 4K, 6K photo and the cameras when we did have those modes, you would look at the photo and then you would be able to apply skew correction. It's actually fairly simple because if you know what the readout speed is of a sensor, you just need points to know like, hey, the image was moved at this, the accelerometer was moved this, this is, how fast it was moving, this is the readout of the sensor, we can approximate how much needs to get corrected back. The newer system, in something like the G9 Mark II, even in the S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX, it just does this. It's doing those calculations as it's saving the files out. Are they going to be perfect? No, not always. If you've got a rolling sensor camera, or a rolling rolling shutter sensor, there's always going to be that point where you can get them to skew. The other thing is that if, like on the G9 Mark II, like we've said, this is not using a stacked sensor because we feel that not even that we feel, you can test for yourself. Stacked sensors have worse shadow noise and lesser detail in the shadows. This sensor doesn't need to be stacked to be damn close to a stacked sensor's readout speed, to the point where, again, if you check with others that are using these cameras right now and are doing some head-to-head tests, we are able to achieve near identical results to a stacked sensor without having to take the penalty that a stacked sensor provides on image quality. Especially if you're actually using it in the world and shooting real-world subjects. Because again, as I said, you can force anything to fail or to show what you are looking for. I can get the fastest stacked sensors out there. You make a fast enough whip pan, you're going to get some skew on that, on a vertical line, especially if it's something that you're looking for. If you're out there, like I love photographing the motorcycles, and I've been really actually challenging myself to do a lot more shutter dragging, with those motorcycles with vertical lines to really be able to see, how does the electronic shutter, skew in the background. And in real world scenarios, I can see no difference between the mechanical shutter and the electronic shutter, even while I'm panning with a subject and I know that I've got vertical lines in the back. It's just real world shooting trumps staring at charts and watching people just sit and whip pan a camera like this just to show you what you're trying to look for. Because the reality is none of us are taking the damn cameras and doing this with them to see these kinds of fails. You're going to go out there, and if you're following a car, you're going to follow the car with it. So if you want to see how it works, go do those things that you actually are trying to do with them to see how the camera performs in the real world. Unless you switch to a global sensor, which is still, my bet, a far way off. Skew is something you're always going to have to deal with to varying levels, but in the real world, it's always less than you think. And I'm willing to bet if you go back and watch some of your favorite movies or TV shows, they're full of skew and you've never noticed it before. Or if you have noticed it, you've never cared enough for it, which at that point means, what are we doing here? Arguing or testing things that are actually inconsequential to the final results that you see. And that's for every camera brand out there. I'm a little jaded on technology in some areas. Let's see here. Why do my S5 Mark II and Mark IIX not allow me to change the HDMI output resolution when an HDMI signal is plugged in but doesn't work when there is no HDMI plugged in? It is grayed out. So modern HDMI connections don't have the manual override for changing what the output resolution is, because of HDMI as a standard. HDMI, as long as your monitor is within the proper specs for HDMI, is going to tell the camera, hey, this is the signal I can accept. If it doesn't do that, it means that it's most likely out of spec and they're not using something correctly on the HDMI signal there. We stick very accurately to what HDMI standards and specifications are. You won't see us kind of go out there and do something that's out of what the specification is designed for. It's why we also build our media solutions, to actually adhere to what these specifications are. Earlier in older versions of HDMI, it was a much, kind of like more like a Wild West kind of scenario. So yeah, you're able to do it. You can change it for playback if you're in like reviewing. But if you're trying to hook up to a monitor that is accepting an HDMI out feed, and it's just giving you a dark screen with it, one of the first things you can always try is connect HDMI and then reboot the device with the camera on, because then when it boots up, it's going to try to redo that handshake and make sure that that information's proper to trigger the monitor what recording options there, or to tell the camera, hey, this is the signal I need from you. If you were watching last week, I actually ran into that problem with my ATEM switcher, which my ATEM Mini, which is the original one, it's quite old and it's been on for a very long time, so it would not surprise me if maybe the HDMI port is starting to fail on it. Not a critique of the product, it's just, it's old. Things happen as this stuff gets older. So, yeah, that's why you don't see that in most of the cameras. Modern monitors should be working within spec and properly communicating to the cameras what their resolution and frame rate accepted inputs are. So, does DR boost affect the readout speed? No, it does not. Because DR boost is taking a singular signal from the sensor and it's processing it twice. So it's not doing two images, it's a singular frame that's being dual pipeline processed and then recombined later pixel level to get you that information. Why do my... okay, no, we did that one. For S5 Mark II X, can you suggest autofocus settings for video of trials motorcycles when trees get in the way? Yeah, so for stuff like that, for any kind of motorcycle tracking, if you're going to be doing photo or video, in the photo side, I'll start with, I have the G9 Mark II set up here, so I have a motorcycle tracking. S5 Mark II, Mark II X do not have this, but AF custom settings are where I'm going with this anyway. So typically, I would recommend using set 4 for speed and sensitivity and all that kind of stuff. What you want to see here is this is where switching sensitivity is effective for what you're going to be shooting. Switching sensitivity, if I come in here and I hit display, is when it's going to change subject, right? So this is where modes like this are going to be active when you are in full area mode, because that's where it's using all of the data. So if you've got people or motorcycles or cars or anything like that that go in and out of trees or backgrounds, I typically, for that kind of stuff, would be looking at this. If you are panning with that subject, so trials motorcycles, if they're going, you're filming them and they're going at a constant speed through, left to right, right to left, front to back, whatever, you can do something like go to set 2, which is designed for constant speed in a singular direction. The other option, and really, I mean, this is actually just going to sound like, hey, go into the custom settings modes here and just try each one, because this is for the photo side. If you are in video, we have custom settings for video. Custom settings for video are going to be a little different. This is where you're going to play with the AF sensitivity for what you'd want to play around with. Locked on means that it's going to lock pretty specific for the, the subject that you're selecting. And it will try to do everything it can to not change subjects or change focus off the selected subject unless, it hits a certain criteria. Person goes behind the tree and you're sitting with the tree between you and the subject for more than, say, like a split second. That's what your AF sensitivity is going to help you with when you're on the video side. Speed, you can also do some stuff with this where, maybe you dial back the actual speed of the system if they're going to be in a little bit more of a, contained location. So, yeah, I mean, in this case, I would probably leave it AF speed 0 and then maybe AF sensitivity, play around with, how locked on you may want to try it. That should help get you different results or better results as you're using the camera in that environment. Let's see here. Can we turn off suggestion exposure when taking pictures? Seems like every time I press the shutter, camera's showing me the right exposure. Thank you. So that's going to be partially down into the exposure compensation, or not exposure compensation, the constant preview setting, and if you're using single AF. Single AF, when you press the shutter, it's going to brighten the image to basically flood the sensor with as much light as it can to get your focus accurate. If you don't want to be seeing that, you could turn constant preview on and set it for more along the lines of, how do I have mine set up? Constant preview. I rarely come in and change this, so there we go. So constant preview on the newer cameras, you'll see that you have the effect for aperture and manual mode to be in where it's going to just control the aperture. So as I change my exposure in the camera, it stops the lens down for focus. That's one way that you can do it, because at that point it's going to, if I start changing the aperture on it, the aperture is going to purposely be closed down. You do have other trade-offs there, especially with PDAF systems. PDAF systems, if you start stopping the lens down, every time you stop the lens down on any camera, I don't care who makes it, you are cutting the amount of light that's actually hitting the sensor, which means that your focusing system has to work harder. It's the equivalent of going into just a darker room to work with. So it's one way to do it. And you won't have as many times where you get the exposure brighten up. But if you're in SAF or single autofocus, typically the system's going to do that, and it's going to get you that look. Since DR boost is automatically enabled in photo mode for GH6, can I assume that setting ISO 2000 would ensure DR boost is on for photo mode? FC, so you can pretty confidently say at about 800 ISO on the GH6 you'll have DR boost enabled for stills. Ulrich, has a G9 Mark II VFR or any other way to do in-camera time-lapse with long exposure? So the G9 Mark II, which is the camera I have attached, let's see if this works this week, and I don't screw this up, because last week, like I said, my ATEM has been causing all kinds of headaches. There it goes. So just like what we were talking about before, my ATEM is starting to cause the problem where if I change resolution or frame rate on the camera, the ATEM kind of freaks out and it doesn't know what to do. That's an ATEM problem. That's not the camera's problem, because it has worked in the past. It only recently started not working proper. But Ulrich, so for VFR or slow motion or the kind of time-lapse in camera, the G9 Mark II does have the slow and quick function. So we do have the ability to come in here and say, you know, let's crank this all the way down to the fastest. So why did I do that? Because it's going to do the same thing it just did before. So we will reacquire that. So say I want to come in here and I want to go 1 frame per second for a kind of hyperlapse style shooting. So I've got the setup here. This is where I can come in because I have my camera set for angle and ISO. If I change this out of angle and just go back to seconds and ISO, you'll see I can drop my shutter speed to 30th of a second. Basically, because you're using footage that is going to be processed as a video, there are some limitations that you may run into, especially because if you've got longer shutter speed than what the frame rate is. So in this case, I'm 24, but 30th is the closest that I can get to it. If I were to do 24th of a second or anything slower than that, it means that multiple frames have the same information, which causes issues when you start encoding that. Especially with things like H.265, stuff like that. So if you want to do like a hyperlapse style shooting, in this case, because I've got the camera set for 1 frame per second at 24 frames per second for the output, yeah, lowest I can go is 30th of a second for shutter speed. If I come in and change this back up to my angle ISO, is where if I start changing this, I can... Yep, I get 11 degrees on that one. Yeah, that's how that's gonna work for it. Explain new S5 Mark II X functions. Yes, so on the S5 Mark II, again, I'm using the G9 Mark II to demonstrate some of these, primarily the handheld high-resolution shot mode. So let me put this back into a stills mode. Get the camera up here. And my Elgato froze again. Not Elgato, my A10 Mini froze. There it goes. So if I want to do high-resolution shot mode with the S5 Mark II X, let's put this in manual. Just be easier to set up everything here. So one of the first things that you're going to see with the high-resolution shot mode is that I'm going to have the ability to go down to 8 seconds if I'm on a tripod. So if I'm here and I go into the menu, these are the new changes you're going to have as an option on the S5 Mark II and the Mark II X. Handheld high res, you'll be able to toggle this on and off. So right now, because I am connected over HDMI, I am limited to the frame rate that I am outputting that the switch is receiving, which is 60 frames per second. If I'm on a tripod, I will be able to do down to 8-second exposures in handheld or in high resolution shot, but not in handheld. Handheld high resolution shot, the lowest you can go is 1 second. So yeah, there's an extension there from what we've been able to do in the past. The other difference here is that handheld high resolution, when it is on, you'll notice that motion blur processing is set to mode 2 and it's disabled. You're not able to change this. The reason for that is that the handheld high resolution shot mode in our camera uses 16 images instead of 8. Those images are put together so that it can do, it can correct for camera movement, subject movement, all that kind of stuff. And then the final result you get out of the camera is the combination of those images to create your high res. You'll get 4 times resolution, or equivalent to 4 times resolution. You also get better per pixel color. You get better, saturation, lower noise because you're merging images together. But also it does compensate for movement. So if when I was in New York, I was taking some street shots with people walking through the streets of Manhattan in handheld high res, and it was freezing them perfect. Now they were walking, not saying that it's going to work perfect for things like a fast moving car or tracking a subject trying to do handheld high res. Doesn't necessarily work that way. But yeah, you will have access to these options on the S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX. Next up is a feature called AF Point Scope. Now, I can't remember. I do not think the G9 Mark II has AF Point Scope at this point. It's something that we've had in previous cameras. In like the original S5 had it. S1 series had it. That particular mode is basically going to function like one area plus, but for all of the options. So if you're in full area, if you're in one area plus, zone, whatever. But it allows you to, through your input, program a function button to give you a punch-in window, picture-in-picture of where the focus point is, or the center of the frame. This can help. This can help with the working for, making sure, like if in macro photography you want to get a super accurate point of where your focus is actually grabbing. So yeah. Let's see here. Is it a more widely known issue with S5 when you take a lot of photos and quickly hit playback to view the camera gets jammed and one has to remove the battery to shut it off? No, that would not really be an us issue from the ones that I have troubleshot. 9 out of 10 times, an issue there is either a bad card or a bad battery. Yeah. With the exception of HDMI RAW not being inside HDMI spec. So, yeah, that is correct. HDMI RAW is not something that is explicitly within the HDMI spec, but we are still sticking to HDMI spec because we are properly actually deploying and applying all of the required specifications for the varying levels of HDMI. HDMI RAW is data that is being sent within the specifications because it sticks to frame rates, and that's why aspect ratio and resolution isn't really as required there, because you're sending data on an established frame rate over HDMI. This is also the reason why we don't do 48 frames per second over HDMI, because for RAW, things like that, or 24 frames per second, like 24.00, because those are not part of the HDMI specification. Is there a way to make S5 2X constantly track focus in real time as I sit in front of it and do self-portraits so that I can see different compositions on the screen as I move around? Yeah. So, what you would want to do is... where is it? I have to remember where this is, because I don't have to do this often. Is it under... setup? It is... where is it? No, it's not Quick AF. Not there. So if I'm doing it in photo, like I said, it's been a while since I've had to go in and actually ever change that setting, because I just, when I get my cameras, it's just set up right out of the box. So if you want to have it set and record, basically show you the focus constantly while you're actually going to be, kind of moving in front of it. Depending on the camera, the newer ones, just put it in AFC, and it should be running there. If you are in video, and this might be because I'm not in the video mode that I can't see that. It is called Why can't I find it? I apologize, everybody. There it is. Continuous AF. So continuous AF. This is on the video side of it. This is what you would need to do. If you are going to be in the actual formal video mode and you want to be able to see how the focus is moving while you're changing composition, you want to change continuous AF to mode 2. Mode 2 will let the AF system run while in standby. Mode 1 means that it will run when you actually click start recording for the video. So if you're just trying to do it for framing and stuff like that, especially in video, set it to mode 2 and it will run. This is also the mode that you would use if you're using the cameras as like a webcam. So yeah. Let's see, I got time for 2 more questions. Well, 2 more questions and a comment. I would like to see pre-burst on the S5 2X and autofocus on self-timer after shutter press. Good recommendations. We will get those passed on. It's not only showing suggested exposure, pics trying to show me correct exposure either way. I'll have to do a little more checking for you. I think it's Elbors. If I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. I'll have to do a little more testing because the way I've worked with the cameras and with the settings that I set up, I don't have those problems for AFC. Where it's changing the exposure. The only other thing that could be changing exposure is if you are in a different metering mode or if you have the camera set in full manual and you're like kind of changing stuff around. But yeah, let me do a little bit of checking so I can kind of get you a little bit better answer. Hopefully I'll be able to get you something like next week. Cool. What is the best stabilization method for handheld video? That's going to depend on, are you moving? Are you walking with the camera? Are you stationary? If you are stationary filming, it's going to be, if you are stationary, it's going to be boost IS. So that means that you are not going to be moving the camera, but you're handheld. If you are moving the camera and you are, following a subject, it's going to be just the dual IS2 system or the OIS or in-body stabilization, depending on the lens you've got attached, and making sure that boost IS and electronic stabilization are turned off, with the exception of the G9 Mark II. If you are walking with the camera for vlogging, things like that, or you're filming yourself, or you're following a subject and they're the primary and you're moving, and you have a G9 Mark II, that is where you can definitely use the electronic stabilization because it's a totally new engine system that we're doing for this camera that isn't in any of the other cameras yet. So, Eric, yes, I did see that one. I do want to get that that one sit there. Sorry to repeat, but are the Lumix photo contest hashtags case sensitive? I'm very new to Instagram. Sorry if it seems obvious. No, that's perfectly fine. Hashtags are not case sensitive, so you shouldn't have a problem with that at all. As long as you're putting the tags in, or tagging the brand or whatever it is that you're who you want to tag with it, that's how they see them. And then they're contests are run through a partner that we work with for all that stuff. So yeah, all right. With that, thank you, everybody. It's actually ran longer than I thought it was going to. I am going to have to call this because I do have to jump to another meeting for wrapping up my day. But everybody, thank you so much for all the great questions, all the great commentary, for helping each other out in the chat. These streams are so much fun, even when I'm, maybe not as high energy as I normally am for these streams. So I apologize if I have been maybe a little lower on the energy side. Travel always takes it out of you for the day you get back. We will be back live again next week, Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. For those, there was a question much earlier that was asking about what's, how's the DJI LiDAR compatibility thing working. I'm hoping to have more updates for everybody next week on that, because I am getting an RS3 Pro and the DJI LiDAR accessory. So I'm hoping that I can actually get some hands-on with it so I can better answer your questions and provide you all some more insight on it. As soon as I get that stuff, like I said, I hope I'm able to get it this weekend. That's, you know, kind of one of the more fun things I want to try to do, even in my off time this weekend. Otherwise, yeah, we will be back next Thursday, 2 p.m. I encourage you all, if you missed it at the intro, I'm going to play it again before I hit the outro screen. Take a look at LUMIX, our LUMIX Presents Shutter Showdown. It's going to be a really cool series that's going to be premiering over on, here on YouTube in November. So definitely take a look at it. Before I go to the end screen, I'm going to be playing that again for those that maybe missed it. It was a super fun project to be part of, and you may see a familiar face or two in there. But yeah, other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. Hope you have an awesome day, and get out there and create some cool stuff. With that, I'll see you later, and take a look at the teasers for Shutter Showdown one last time.
Welcome, filmmakers and adventure seekers, to the most exhilarating reality competition of the year.
Oh, I love that. I think
Our contestants will face off in a series of nail-biting challenges that will push their creativity,
it's getting so dark.
ingenuity,
I gotta make it work.
and storytelling skills to their absolute limits. All while navigating through treacherous mountain terrain and unknown wilderness.
I'll see you at the end.
So join us on this epic adventure where the magic of filmmaking meets the grandeur of nature. LUMIX presents Shutter Showdown. Get ready for the ultimate filmmaking battle.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't really know what's in store or what we're going to be doing, but I think it'll be pretty fun.
You've got a very pretty dog. Do you want videos of it? I do not have nearly enough footage. Yesterday, I had so much footage.
Tomorrow is the true filmmaking challenge, and let's see how this young kid can perform.
Should've got that 14 mil.
I just was trying to run to make time.
Oh, I'm so sorry to the sound guy.
This is like way insane.
It's a lot less humid than I thought.
Where do we go? I just wish we had more time.
Man, I'm loving this spot.
Where's the tripod?
I do not have nearly enough footage.
I feel like you're getting all the cool shots.
Try to film as much as I can so I don't have nothing.
Pull!
Trees, the mountains, everything about this place is just gorgeous.
We definitely got the best challenge. I've got a great camera. I've got a great set of lenses. I have a lot of questions, so I'm excited to see what we get into.